All right, great. Welcome. Thank you everyone for joining Learn How to Develop Your Personal Brand Part 1. This is a 3-part series, and we have a great faculty here for y'all, which we will introduce. I am your moderator today. My name is Lexi Lutz, and I am Senior Corporate Counsel at Extended Stay America Hotels. I'm based in Charlotte, North Carolina. And we look forward to the program today. Thank you everyone again for joining. So today's program is meant for lawyers seeking to develop or improve their own personal brands, both internally and externally. We'll get more into what that means later. This is not a skill that's taught in law school or any other academic course, and developing your brand can provide you with a wider career and leadership opportunities. So we're grateful to have an amazing panel that will provide guidance on their strategies for developing their own brand and other lawyer brands. Before we dive into this discussion, let's take a moment to introduce our esteemed faculty. First, we have Katie Larkin-Wong, who is Associate General Counsel in the Competition and Regulatory Team at Meta. Prior to joining Meta, Katie practiced at a law firm in San Francisco where she supported clients in both white-collar and antitrust matters. She also had an active pro bono practice. Outside of Meta, Katie serves on the ABA Board of Governors as board emirate at nonprofit organization Miss JD, and on the advisory board of the Institute for Inclusion in the Profession. Next, we have April Roberts. April is an entrepreneur and co-founder at Nomos Marketing. Prior to her career in marketing, April worked in higher education as the director of extension for a national collegiate organization. She discovered her passion for marketing and client service after joining Wonderist Agency as head of account management. April is passionate about business development, building partner relationships, and delivering excellent client service for both Nomos Marketing and its clients. Next, we have Cannon C. Kearney. He's a liquor law attorney with the Espinosa Kearney Law Group, a full-service liquor, family, and real estate law firm located in the heart of Manhattan. Mr. Kearney is a former judge with the New York State Office of Fair Hearings and former prosecutor with the New York State Liquor Authority. And finally, last but not least, we have Tyler Roberts, who is an attorney and co-founder of Nomos Marketing, a full-service marketing agency for lawyers on a mission to make the law more accessible, more approachable, and ultimately more human. Tyler discovered a passion for entrepreneurship and legal technology after working at several early-stage startups and later reporting on legal trends as an editor for 3 law-related magazine publications. Of course, this is just the highlight reel of our accomplished panel, and I welcome you to read their bios online. And quickly, I'd like to set up what you can expect from today's panel. This program will consist of a moderated discussion of challenges and strategies for effective lawyer personal branding. And we're going to go through personal brand, external branding, internal branding, messaging, and actionable takeaways. And just so you all know, one of the themes for the ABA YLD professional development team this year is action. We want you all, because we have these programs not for us, but for you, and we want you all to have actionable takeaways that you can implement today to get you closer towards your goal of developing yourself professionally. So first question, a brand has a general definition, but would like to know what this term means to each of you as it relates to personal branding. Katie, can we start with you?
Yeah, sure. So for me, personal brand is a couple of different things. It's what people say about you when you're not in the room. It's the things you want to be known for. And so for me, that means things that I'm passionate about, the things that I want people to come to me for, whether that's substantive areas of the law or for me, as maybe you might guess from my bio, I care deeply about diversity, equity, and inclusion issues, and I've been working on them for my entire career. And so that's another thing that I think of as being part of my personal brand. So I think it's really about taking a step back and thinking about, what do I want to be known for in my practice? What do I want to be known for outside of my practice? I honestly think your personal brand carries over into your personal life. Like how, I think about it in terms of, what's the perception that other moms at kindergarten have, right? That's something that carries over. And I think that's partially because you never know who people know or what the interaction is going to be. So having an authentic, consistent personal brand, I think, is critically important. But that's how I think about it. I think it's a very well-rounded issue.
Absolutely. Thank you, Katie. April, what do you think?
I completely agree with Katie. I always say that your personal brand is about being authentic to who you are. I think oftentimes as professionals in any field, you can easily look at something that someone else is doing and say, gosh, that's so cool. That's exactly what I want to do. But if that's not authentic to who you are, then it doesn't come across well. And so I think you have to kind of take a step back, self-evaluate and see like what you enjoy doing, who you are. Because I think you have to be authentic in everything that you're doing, because to clients, potential clients, that's definitely going to come across. And so I always just say, be true to who you are and the rest will kind of fall in place.
That's great. Thanks, April. Cannon, what does a personal brand mean to you?
Well, good afternoon, Lexi. Thank you for having me here. When I think about a personal brand, I think about what is the world looking at me? How would my parents think about me? What would a client or a potential client think about me? I guess in a way, it's something that is an inward thought of, how you want to project yourself, how you want to be seen amongst your peers. It's holistic. So when I think of a personal brand for new attorneys, I think about how they could work to ensure that after they pass the bar or after they're done with law school, that they're able to show exactly the talents that they want to portray to the world. That would be my thought for a personal brand.
Wonderful. Thank you, Cannon. Tyler, what about you?
Well, it's tough to follow everyone because they've all had such great answers. But I think one thing I can add here is I think telling a story about who you are and what you do is really important to building your personal brand. A lot of times people connect with stories, including stories that you tell about yourself. So think about, not just the last job that you have and like technically what you did, but like how did that contribute to your overall growth as a professional? How does that contribute to your mission? And then I think when you're talking to either an employer or a prospective client, or even just friends and family, it helps clarify what it is that you do and what you stand for.
Great. All great answers. So let's go a step further. And Cannon, you touched on this briefly, but why is developing a distinct brand important for young lawyers? Tyler and April, would you kick us off with your thoughts, please?
Yeah, for me, it's about the snowball effect of building up your personal brand. If you start when you are speaking engagements, community involvement, and just kind of building that reputation over time. And so I think it's hard when you try to jump in and start doing that, later on in your career, because some people have been developing that skill set or that resume, for like the first 20 years of theirs. So I think it's a good idea to begin building that brand and starting to figure out like what it is that you want to do. And then of course, looking forward, what is it that you want people to say about you and how do you want to be perceived at the end of your career, and what are the things you can do now to start working towards that?
Great. Katie, what about you?
Look, I think it's really important. You can't be all things to all people. Even lawyers who are more generalists, right, do have things that they are specialized in, right? And I think it's important to think about like, what is it that you want to do and what is it that you want to be known for? And I think especially early in your career, then you want to talk to people who, you see doing what you want to do. Not every practice, the way that I would promote myself and my personal brand in, the antitrust world is probably different than what Cannon would do. And like, I'm sure he and I could talk about that. And I would be happy to talk to you about how, like, for example, one of the best ways to start building a personal brand, if you want to be a competition lawyer, is getting pretty heavily involved in the ABA, the section of antitrust law in the ABA, and writing and doing things like that. That's not going to be true for every practice area. And so I think looking ahead and seeing people who are doing what you think you want to be doing over the long term, talking to them about how they built their brands and how they would recommend that you think about building your brand. And then like try it out, because there is no one single way. There's no one road to doing this. And there's different ways to build a brand. If you really like to write, maybe you write more articles. If you love being, if you're like me, a bit of a social butterfly, very extroverted, like you may love panels and conferences and things like that, because that's sort of where your comfort zone is. Figure out what those things are for you. Going back to authenticity, be authentic to what matters to you. Building a personal brand doesn't need to feel like a chore. It should feel like something that is aligned with both your values and who you are as a person. So to recap, first, think about substantively what you want to do and look ahead to people who are doing it already. 2, be authentic about what works for you. And 3, understand that there's no single way to do this. There's lots of different ways, and you just need to think about what it is that you enjoy. I don't know, Cannon, you may say something totally different than me now, because like I said, this substance matters. Like what you want to be doing matters.
Thank you, Katie. Yeah, Cannon, what about you? Why is developing a distinct brand? I know you touched on this for lawyers right out of the bar exam and all that, but do you want to go a little bit more deeper with that?
So definitely, Katie, I actually agree with you wholeheartedly. So one of the things that I believe is that young attorneys are so like fresh out of, what they went through in law school that they really don't even know what their brand is. I mean, you may have a thought of, yeah, I watch Suits and I want to be like my favorite actor, or you may have watched your sibling or cousin or friend who did well out of law school, and you're like, wow, I really could be like them. And I like the way that they look. But in reality, we all have to take our own paths to figure out what is good for us. And in that path, that means that you may need to be exposed to many different types of attorneys, many different types of practices to see what fits you best. So why does that matter? Because again, just as Katie said, there's so many different ways. So specifically for myself, I actually did antitrust out of law school. I actually did criminal law, family law, liquor law, all of these different things to try to figure out how can I portray who I want to be the best in my everyday practice. And so based off of the experiences that I had, I was able to see that the brand that I want to provide for my clients or for people who are looking at me is a brand that is in liquor law, because that's something that I enjoy. Liquor goes with my everyday lifestyle. Who doesn't want to have a beer after work? Who doesn't want to go to a ball game and have a hot dog and a beer? So all of these things are like, wow, that's a brand that goes with me. So I do wholeheartedly agree with everybody that you have to be authentic, just as April said, because at the end of the day, if you're trying to be somebody that you aren't, that's going to not sell to the client. That's not going to sell to your partner. That's not going to sell to your supervising attorney. So you have to do, as a young attorney, you just need to keep, refining yourself, keep understanding that there are different ways to show yourself to the public.
Great, thanks, Cannon. feel like we're going to have an uptick of liquor lawyers here in the near future after that. No, that's very true. And thank you. So we've identified the importance of a brand, and now we're going to get into the different types. So an external brand is considered essentially anyone from outside of yourself, how they perceive you, and we've touched on that. But let's address the best way to develop your external brand. And I'd like to start with Canon. Can you tell us how you branded yourself externally and how the branding has impacted your career?
Yeah, so I'll talk about like 3 specific things. Number 1, social media. So I'm a person who doesn't even have social media. I have no Facebook. I have no, TikTok. I don't have any of these things. However, those are great things. So I'm not talking bad about them. I just don't have them. That's not my brand. But LinkedIn is a form of social media that has truly, truly helped me to grow my personal brand. LinkedIn, obviously, most people would know, is a way that you put your resume up. You're able to put articles that you've written up. You're able to discuss things that, professionals might find appealing. And so that is actually the client base that I'm looking to appeal to, or the set of individuals that I would want to market my brand to. So I would say LinkedIn is a great way to brand yourself. Just a quick example, literally out of the blue, I got an email from an agent of a news station. She said she saw my LinkedIn account. She asked me if I wanted an opportunity to speak on national television. So again, that's just me not knowing her, like sending her a straightforward email and saying, hey, work with me. That was her looking at my LinkedIn account. So that's something that I would say definitely could change your life if you put it in the emphasis to your LinkedIn. Second, I would say, externally, your enemies, your opponents, the people that you don't have the best relationships with, those are your best sellers, because they took time to dissect you when they were going against you. So I say that to say another example. I would say at least 5 to 10 of my clients have come from opposing counsel. Literally after we were done with our trial or our hearing, we would shake hands. I introduce myself, say good job, regardless if I won or lost. And let's just say I always won. But, it was an opportunity for me to actually show myself approved. Next thing you know, I'm getting phone calls from potential leads, potential clients who actually are telling me they were referred to me by the people that I just went to battle with in court. So what does that mean? You want to ensure that you always put your best foot forward, regardless of differences, regardless of race, sex, whatever it may be, because this is a small group of people. So you're going to see these people over again. Lexi is in North Carolina. I'm in New York, but we went to law school together and she had me here today. So you never know who it is that you make an impression on. And then lastly, I would just say in your community, never forget that those who are downtrodden, those who don't have the amount of money. I heard one of the panelists said that she had a pro bono clinic. Those types of things make a huge difference for people who you may think may not be able to assist you. But those stories, those messages to people, that makes them more endeared to you. That makes them feel like you're somebody that you could have a beer with. And so I would say those are 3 ways that you can definitely improve your external branding.
Yes, that is great. Thank you, Cannon. I need to be taking notes during this. This is great. Katie, what about you? How have you externally branded yourself? I know you touched on it, but could you dive a little deeper into that?
Yeah, sure. So for me, external branding has looked very different when I've been outside counsel versus now that I'm in-house. And I think that's something we just want to recognize. And I also think the way that you brand yourself is different when you're a new attorney versus when you are a little bit more established. And so like, let's also distinguish those things and talk about it for just a second. For me, when I was an early attorney, I was very focused on branding myself within, the firm with with the people who I was trying to, ensure were getting where they needed to go. So I was focused on, branding myself with partners. I was focused on making sure that, I was known within the firm. That was sort of my early external branding, right? It was external to me. It was not external to the firm. With one exception. As I mentioned, I cared very, very much about diversity, equity, and inclusion, and I got very involved with Ms. JD from the time I was in law school. I was very lucky to have a firm that was extraordinarily supportive of my work with Ms. JD and viewed it as a positive thing that I was out there speaking on diversity, equity, and inclusion issues. And so, to be honest, I, in many ways, got more leash almost than some other young attorneys elsewhere because I was out there doing those things. And as a result, it became something that was actually very valuable to the firm and to me. It was a very symbiotic relationship. So I say that to say, like, you can think about your external brand, as I said before, in a lot of different ways and just find the things that are authentic to you. As you go further on in your career, I cannot agree with Canon more. The number of times that you can make or break opportunities as an outside counsel based on how you conduct yourself opposing someone. There are firms who have gotten themselves hired by my employer because of the work that they've done across from us. There are firms who have guaranteed they will never be hired by us because of the work that they have done across from us. And so like, I think you have to constantly understand that whether you are thinking about it or not, you are creating an external brand. And I think that comes back to the authenticity point. If your brand is not just simply who you are, and if you aren't looking for something that fits with you, then it's not going to work, right? It's not going to be something you can't fake it 24/7. And so one of the things I've talked to, new attorneys, new lawyers about is, I hate some of the advice, especially to women, about like, you must wear X, Y, and Z, when you're interviewing, like black suit, white shirt, don't show any personality, no chunky jewelry, blah, 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 blah. I'll be honest, like, I'm sitting here today in a dress. It's got polka dots all over it. If you don't want to hire me because I want to wear a dress with polka dots, I don't want to work for you. If that's a problem for you, then you and I are not a good fit. And so this is what I mean about authenticity and really finding your place. And I think once you find your place and what fits for you, external branding feels easy. It feels simple because you're just doing things that are natural to you. One last comment. I think this can look really different as your career moves and changes too. So for me right now, like a lot of the times when I'm interacting with outside counsel, they have adjusted to the fact that I have young kids. And so they're talking to me about, what I'm doing with my kids. We're going to, we're doing family things together because that's where I want to spend my time outside of the office. And like the outside counsel who really know me and who want to just build relationships outside and separate from the substantive work, which by the way, has to be excellent separately. That's like, I really value that. I value that you see that I am a very busy mom with young kids and you're down to like, let's take the kids to fairyland together. Like that to me is spot on. And so I think just being conscious about what works for you and where you are in your life, as Canon said, like slightly different viewpoint for me right now. Not that I don't love a big glass of wine, but I think that's how you want to think about it.
Thank you, Katie. Yes, I was on an email the other day asking for people's availability, and the data privacy officer of a large nonprofit organization said, I'm available all day, but please after 9 and before 4, because I am a mother. And like, I love that. Like, that was great. And obviously that's part of her brand, which is awesome. Great. So I would like to take an opportunity, a quick pause here, to remind the audience that y'all can submit questions to our faculty in the chat. So please feel free to do that. Hopefully we'll have time at the end and we'll be able to ask some of your questions specifically that you have on any of the topics we're talking about, or any questions that you've just had in general. So some lawyers get the job at the firm or company that they want, but then they forget that they must continue to brand themselves not only to external parties, but also internally in their organization, whether that be a law firm or a company. What are your strategies for developing your internal brand? Katie, what do you think?
Yeah, so I think like do good work has to be number one. Like it has to be number one. And so I think like being someone that people can rely upon, being someone who's known for excellent work is point one. Point two to me, and I think this is both an internal and an external thing, is knowing who you're working with and how they want to be communicated with. And so, for example, I spend most of my day working with our business teams. You know, sometimes with commercial lawyers and product lawyers, but a lot of times I'm engaging directly with our business teams. They do not want a memo from me. They do not want me to send them a 5-page memo with a detailed legal analysis. They want an answer, and they want bullet points where possible. And so, you know, for me, like understanding and really being able to identify with that is critical. You know, knowing how to digest a complicated issue and advise the client about like, here's the couple of things that change your risk profile, right? So that they can make decisions about whether that makes sense. Those are sort of the critical pieces of internal branding. So for me, it's exceptional work, really good partnership, and very strong communication skills. And those communication skills need to match the people that you're working with. So those are sort of the 3 things that I think of as being critical to internal branding. The extra stuff, you know, planning, you know, being part of planning groups, sitting on additional committees, doing things like that, obviously very helpful as well in terms of building your brand and building your relationships. But I think like you've got to start with the base of exceptionally good work.
Agreed. Thank you, Katie. April and Tyler, what about y'all's perspective?
Yeah, so I always tell people it's all about being a sponge. Take in as much information as you can from people who have been doing this for years and have been very successful in it. Ask questions, not just about things that have worked well for them, but about their failures. I feel like I've kind of failed my way to the top, not that I'm at the top at all, but like I keep failing and learning and getting better and better. And I think that that's really important to do, and not be afraid to not fail, because that's just part of it. Like you're going to make mistakes, you're going to learn from it, and just keep growing with that. I think really taking time to ask questions and see what it's going to take to get you to the next level is so important. That shows you're ambitious and you want to continue to grow and learn. And those are the team members that we promote on our team. That's how we both have gotten to where we are. And, you know, I think that ambition is just so important to have.
And I would say like one thing I'd add to it, which is more of like a soft skill, is being like a contributor to the culture of the organization that you're in. Not being a carbon copy of everyone that you work with, but being someone who has a positive attitude, someone who uplifts other people, someone who contributes, you know, to the dialogue of the law firm or the company in a meaningful way. I think, you know, not being afraid to share your voice and like your distinct perspective. Those are all things that are going to help you long-term in your career. And then one thing we were talking about too is like, remember that regardless of whether you work as a lawyer, at a small law firm or large law firm or in-house, the business exists to grow and to be profitable. And so if you can contribute to that in some way, that's a really powerful story to be able to tell your supervisor or the owner of the business when you do go in for a promotion or for a raise. And so keeping that in mind, I think a lot of times we get really focused on like what the task is at hand, but we don't think about how we can help grow the business or improve it. And so definitely start to look for things that you can do that might be unique to you. Like what's the one thing that you can do that no one else in the organization can do that's going to make a huge impact. So I love what April said. I don't think I could have said it any better. But the one thing that we look for in addition to that is like the contribution that you make, and how is that different from the contribution that someone else could make.
Can I just say one thing to add to that is the flip side. It gets noticed when you do not take good care of people. Like if you are not treating everyone with respect and being conscientious of every person in the office's time and their value. I can tell you for me and for many of the people I work with, that is like an instant turn off and sort of, so like think about your brand in both directions and know that it gets noticed across the board.
Great. Thank you, Katie and April and Tyler. Completely agree. Looking for more of a 30,000 foot view versus just a lot of times we get lost in the weeds and what we're doing in the moment. So that is very helpful. Cannon, what do you think as far as your internal branding for you in your law firm?
So internally, I guess the way to look at it is, how do my employees look at me? Do they respect me as their boss? Do they enjoy coming to work? Why does that matter? Because at the end of the day, if my own employees don't respect me or see me as being competent in the law, then why would a client? So many times I take time out of the day to speak with my employees or my paralegals to see whether or not, I address the client correctly, whether or not I may have had too much base in the argument with opposing counsel, just these different things, because again, we want to ensure that regardless of me having my own firm, I still have to project out my brand. And I want my brand to be something that comes off, as everyone says, as authentic, as something that, you want to stand for. And so by being able to speak to my employees, being able to speak to my paralegals, my associates, I'm able to see and continue to hone in on the specific brand that I am putting out.
Wonderful. Thank you, Cannon. To go a step further, messaging is kind of one of the themes, I think, of branding that we wanted to bring to y'all's attention. So April and Tyler, as founders of a full service legal marketing firm, this question I think pairs nicely with your work. So can you help us to understand exactly what messaging is and why it's so important in developing a lawyer's brand?
Yeah, so we can talk about it from like a marketing perspective, but then bring it down to like the personal perspective too. So when we're working with a new client, let's say it's a solo law firm in a saturated market, it's a personal injury lawyer who's opening up on Main Street, and there's 10 other personal injury lawyers, right across the street from them. A lot of times we tell them to take a step back because they want to jump straight into like SEO or pay-per-click or building out a fancy website. And we can do all of that. But at the end of the day, you need to figure out what makes you different from all those other competitors. Otherwise, people are just going to make a decision based off of price or convenience or some other factor that doesn't really relate back to like the quality of service that they're going to get. So messaging plays a huge part in your marketing and how effective it is, especially if you want to stretch every marketing dollar that you have. So when it comes to like developing your personal brand, I kind of want to take the same approach here, which is, if we were to give you a microphone and put you in the busiest, on the busiest corner in your market, like what is it that you would say that would stop people and have them listen to you? What is it that's going to have people take notice? And so figuring out what that is not really an easy task, but it's something that evolves and something that you continue to grow with throughout your career. I know we'll get into some action steps, but one of the things that I always like to think about is like, who is it that you're serving and what's the value that you provide to them? And then why are you doing it? If you can answer like those 3 questions, that really helps develop a really clear message as to like what it is that you do and what you stand for. I think, both Katie and Kearney can probably answer those questions really quickly, and they probably have it, memorized. So when they're shaking hands at a networking event, people know within the first minute of meeting them what they stand for and what they do. So I would encourage everyone to think about, what's the value that they're providing, why are they doing what they're doing, who are they serving, and then beyond that, just what makes them uniquely qualified in order to do those things.
Yeah, and I think it's okay if it takes you time to figure that out. I mean, I think about when we started Nomos, we were pretty young. I think we were in our like mid-20s and we didn't have all those answers. And I think over time we became more confident with those as we evolved. And we're like, okay, this is more true to who we are. We used to kind of hide where I was like, oh, we're too young. Like we shouldn't be like showing our faces. Like, I don't want people to know that we're like in our 20s at the time. But I just kind of was like, screw it, like this is who we are. And we are authentic because of this. And we show our family now. We have our dogs in the office. I'm surprised one isn't jumping up behind us. But, I think it's totally fine to not know those things day one. Like take time, do some self-discovery, figure out what it is and what brings you joy. And that's going to make this whole process so much more enjoyable for y'all.
Yes, and April, to that point, I'm sure many of your clients appreciate how young you are because you can do a lot of the technology things that I'm sure they can't. Not to be ageist, I can't do a lot of technology either. So this bar year, like I said, we're making it a point to share with our attendees actionable items that can be implemented immediately that will positively impact the purpose of the program. And because these programs we're putting on are for you, we want to make sure you have these actionable takeaways. So the last question from me, and I know we have some questions in the chat to address, but last question from me to our faculty is, what are some tips from you, 1 or 2 actionable takeaways that our attendees can do today, right now, after this program, to improve their own personal branding strategies? Katie, let's start with you.
Yeah, so I'm going to take a step back and focus on the self-discovery piece. Like a whole lot of your personal brand is figuring out who you are and who you want to be to the world. And when I was very early on in my career, I didn't actually know the answers to those questions. One of the things about, being further along in my career, maybe being a little bit older, I don't know, whatever it is, I feel more confident about who I am and who I want to be and who I want to present to the world. But in my early days, I didn't know that. And I met an executive coach who said to me, she said, who do you want to be? And I didn't have a great answer for that question at the time. And she said, okay, I want you to, for the next month, collect all the magazines that come to your house, regardless, like ABA Journal, your Vogue and whatever, fitness magazines, like collect them and just stack them up in a corner of your house and then get a poster board. And she said, I want you to take 30 minutes and tear through that stack of magazines. Don't pay attention, just tear out things that appeal to you. Like whatever it is, don't think, just do. And then spend another 30 minutes, don't think, just do, and glue stuff to the poster board. And she said, and then step back and think about why you liked those things. Like, why does it matter to you? What is it saying to you about who you want to be and where you want to be? And it was a very interesting activity for me because it forced me to do something that was very visceral and physical. I think as lawyers, we can often be in our heads. And it let me step back and think about, okay, what is all of this thing? What does this mean about who I want to be? And it was interesting, maybe not surprising. A lot of things I tore out were like words. They were descriptions of like who I wanted to be, but it was a really useful task for me. So that's one thing that's like an actionable takeaway. Pile up your magazines, go through, very visceral about it. And that's just to help you get a sense of like, what would this brand look like for me? Like, who do I want to be? And then the second thing I'll say is look around you, look at lawyers that you respect and that you think like, as I, someday I want to be them, and spend some time with them. Like ask for an informational interview, buy them coffee, whatever it may be, and ask them about how they got to where they are and what it is that they think makes their brand successful. And ask them about the things that you are particularly impressed by, right? Maybe you're impressed by the way they've developed their community around them. Maybe you're impressed by the leadership opportunities that they have taken. Maybe you're impressed by their clientele. Ask them about those specifics. Don't just ask like, how did you get where you are? Ask specific driven questions, because those are easier to answer and it doesn't make people feel like you're wasting their time, to be honest. So those are my 2 tips for actionable takeaways.
Great, thank you, Katie. Cannon, what is your opinion?
Oh, she took the words right out of my mouth. It's as if we wrote our notes at the same time. So I would say, I have to reiterate what she's already said. Essentially, you, in building your brand, I would say take a notepad, write down 3 of the things that you enjoy most in life. So whether that's going to a baseball game, whether that's being with your family, whether that's going to church, whatever it may be, or synagogue, whatever it may be, write those 3 things down. And I guarantee you, of those 3 things, there will be a practice of law that's for you. So for example, I've told you about the vices that I like, which is liquor. There's liquor law. Then my friend who just got his LLM grew up with equestrians and in the casinos, and now he's doing gaming law. But let's talk about things that are even better. Like maybe I enjoy children and being with family. There's family law practice, or there's immigration to ensure families stay together. So all I would say is knowing what type of attorney you are going to be will assist you the most in knowing the type of brand, because each practice gives you a unique ability to tailor your brand. And then lastly, as she said, insight and perspective, conferences with your favorite or people that you find, I would say people that you find things that you like about them in their practice, things that you want to grow in for yourself. Those are people that you can send a quick email, ask for an insight and perspective conference over coffee. You want to do it in person, allow them to talk about themselves. Most people do enjoy talk about themselves. And then, take something from that you can use to say, this person they did something in that meeting or that conference that really changed you. And those are the 2 things that I would give for ensuring that you can be a better attorney, regardless of age. I think those are things that would help you out.
Excellent, thank you, Cannon. April, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I completely agree with Katie and Cannon. I think, kind of going back to figuring out what makes you different. I think definitely spend time on that, and then take a step back and reflect to say, do people know this about me? And if they don't know what makes me different, then how can I get that out there? Is that through a tagline? Is that written on my website? If I do social media, can you find that on social media? Making sure that you're leading with that. And those are kind of like your marketing foundations, but like in the community, we've talked a lot about that. Like that is your marketing as well, and making sure that people know that. So when, say something happens, depending on what type of attorney you are, you want people to know, hey, Tyler does X, Y, and Z. He's really good at this. Like, stay top of mind with those people, because that is just as important. So definitely taking some time to figure out what makes you different and leaning into that.
Great, thanks, April. Tyler?
So everyone said a lot of like what I would like to say in terms of like doing the self-discovery and like telling your story. So maybe I'll just provide just some like quick actionable steps for implementing that into like the marketplace, whether that's like internally with your current law firm or externally. And so I would say first, kind of figure out what your story is. Everyone loves a good story. Everyone wants to be a part of a story. And if we're able to weave together, a sequence of events or previous experiences or the things that you're passionate about, it really helps people understand who you are and what you stand for and what you want to do. Beyond that, I would say after this webinar, maybe look for one network of people that can help you reach your goals as a professional. So you know where you want to go, you know what your life is going to look like. You're starting with that vision in mind. Who is it that's going to help you get to that point, and go and find that network. Figure out what platform they're on and join that platform, whether that's LinkedIn or Instagram. I mean, it could even be TikTok. And like April said, it could be email marketing, having an email list of people that you reach out to on a monthly basis, and just find a way to share what you're passionate about, what you're doing, the things that you're working on, the things that your friends are working on, and just build yourself into that community and really invest in that. And I think that will be something that will take you a long way in the future. So just to kind of recap, figuring out what your story is, it's going to evolve. Don't worry, it doesn't have to be perfect. Finding a network of people who can help you, achieve those goals, but then pour yourself into that network and really find a way to engage with them, regardless of what the platform may be.
Great, thank you. And I think a lot of y'all have a very similar theme of there's no right answer when you're doing the self-discovery process. You just got to do it. It's not going to be perfect. It might not be what you want the first time around, but yes, great advice. Thank y'all. All right, so now we have some questions from the audience. Cannon's answered some of them, which y'all can definitely save that. Which is great, but let's get everyone's input on these. So question from Lisa, can we please address developing a brand if we are a new attorney, not a young attorney? I definitely know what value I bring, but not everyone wants to hear it. So Cannon, you provided your input. Do you just want to kind of share with the rest of the audience, if they're not reading the question box, what you responded?
Okay, so essentially I understand the distinction. She's stating that, new means, I can't speak what she means, but I'm assuming that she means that new means just past the bar, relatively fresh out of law school, whereas young could be, an age. Again, I'm not putting any age limit on what young is, because I'm sure my mom at 70 feels like she's young. So again, I get it. But so how does that matter? Why does that matter with the branding? So I feel like a new attorney wants to have their brand to be where they look as if they're competent. Because if you're new, essentially what that means is everybody's like, oh, we can just dump everything on you. It's gonna, you're gonna have a lot of assignments, and you want to be able to show that you can keep it going. You're accessible, you're ready for whatever comes your way. Whereas when you're young, or maybe I just mixed it, I'm sorry. But again, I do believe there is a distinction in new and young. There are different ways that you would brand yourself based off of that.
Hey, do you want to jump in?
I agree. I agree with Kenan. I think, look, it's a bit of a hot take, maybe. I don't know. Law school teaches you nothing about what it means to actually be a lawyer. I'm sorry. Like, it's the most backwards way of teaching lawyers how to be lawyers. So you sort of assume, you should assume coming out of law school that you're going to need some time to develop. And I think attitude is everything here. You're going to need the reps, and no one, the other thing is law is a judgment game. you have to get, yes, there's the black letter law, but there's also just a lot of gray. And you've got to get used to playing in that gray and advising clients in that gray and getting people comfortable in that area that isn't clear in the law. That's how it develops. That's how this stuff works. And so part of it is getting comfortable being uncomfortable as a young attorney, as a new attorney. B, I think it's about having a brand where you're constantly looking to learn. And look, that's still my brand. I am constantly looking to learn. I'm constantly looking to grow. I'm constantly looking to expand because there's always something else that I can be working on. And as a new attorney, like that was something that I looked for, you know, in associates that I wanted on my teams. It's still something I look for today in terms of teams that I'm building with outside counsel. It's something I reward. It's something I talk about with outside counsel. I noticed like she's grown a lot on this case and let's give her more opportunities, right? Like, so I think as much as anything, hunger, attitude, a willingness to grow, grit and growth mindset, knowing that when, you know, your memo comes or your motion, whatever comes back bleeding from track changes, it is just an opportunity to grow. Feel fast, feel forward. And like that needs to be, I think, your attitude as a new attorney, because we all have a lot to learn.
Thank you, Katie. April and Tyler.
Yeah, so this is going more in the marketing direction, but I think it's helpful. We just did a branding round with a new client last week who had a full career in another industry. She had retired, then she went to law school and she's starting her own law firm now. And so she was like, you know, I don't know what I can say about my experience. I don't know how to, you know, talk about myself in the market because I don't have any experience doing this. And just for context, she's starting an elder law firm, and her whole niche or her whole perspective is like she's going to help people transition into like the second half of their life and look at like what they're going to be excited about, you know, like what to look forward to. And so one of the things that we talked about was like, you may not have legal experience, but you have life experience. And regardless of what age you are, you do have life experience that helps contribute to your growth as a professional, and also gives you that perspective to bring to the table when you are, you know, talking about, you know, things that are operating in gray areas, and, you know, being able to connect with your clients or connecting with your coworkers or your boss. And so I think a lot of times we, especially as younger professionals or new professionals in a new industry, we're a little intimidated by everyone else. But just realize that you've probably gone through a lot in your life and you've probably learned a lot of lessons that are going to serve you much better than, you know, criminal law 101. You know, like he said, the law school is not going to prepare you to be, you know, a top-notch lawyer. That's all through experience and being a good professional and being someone who people can rely on and someone that people want to work with. That comes back to your personal brand and your personality and your attitude and how you treat other people. And so just wanted to offer like that word of encouragement to someone who is a new attorney. If you are feeling like you don't have a place or you don't have a distinct voice, like that's totally fine. But you know, you do have life experience, and that contributes greatly to your success overall.
Wonderful. Thank you, Tyler. Next question that we had was, what is your advice for posting content on LinkedIn? And since Cannon already brought up LinkedIn, do you want to go ahead and start?
I would definitely say that I am growing in my, so first and foremost, again, I told y'all I've never done social media before. So this is like my first time engulfing in, you know, a social platform where people know about me, have access to me, can read a picture, read my a mistake that I put on, a word, whatever, and have an ability to make a thought about me from that. So I'm learning now that I actually want to have a social media developer that I'm working with in order to actually take over my LinkedIn, because it's so important to me and to our business that I feel as if, you know, I go to you know, when I take my car to get the oil change, I allow somebody to do that. When I go to the doctor, I allow a doctor to do that. So I believe that this is something that I should put in an expert's hands. So with that being said, I would definitely say that you should take it seriously, because this is something that, again, I know not just from personal experience, but from others, that their careers have catapulted just based off of having a good LinkedIn account.
Great, thank you, Cannon. And April, I saw that you also responded. So do you want to elaborate?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's all about having that unique perspective. I think a lot of times when I log into LinkedIn, I'm like, seen that, seen that, seen that. It's like the same thing over and over again. So providing that fresh perspective and making sure that you're not just adding another voice to it, but you're saying something a little bit different, like what hasn't been said already. I think it's also important to engage in what other people are doing on LinkedIn or any social media platform, you know, say it is TikTok or whatever, definitely contributing to that, because in turn, like those people are going to turn around and support you. And honestly, like that's kind of how we've built our business so far. We haven't, you know, we're not running Google ads for ourselves. We're not doing things like that. But I think supporting other businesses, them turning around and supporting you, that goes a really long ways. And so I think keep that in mind as you are posting and doing those things, to just engage with others. But I think sometimes people get a little overwhelmed with social. And I love what Cannon was saying. He was like, you know, TikTok, I think Instagram maybe is not your place, but you're like LinkedIn, I own it. I love that. Like there's no reason to overwhelm yourself with something that you're like, listen, like I might hate TikTok. I don't want to be on TikTok. Don't be on TikTok. Like, you know, just own a few things that you feel like you can be really good at and just go all in on that.
Yeah,
Great.
I'd add one more thing, which is if you aren't in a place like, you know, like Canon, where you're ready to hire somebody to handle it for you, start small, set small, you know, to borrow a business term, set small KPIs, key performance indicators for yourself. I'm going to post 1 tweet a week. I'm going to, you know, do 1 reel a week on Instagram, you know, whatever it may be. And here's another place where, like, be authentic to yourself, right? For Cannon, LinkedIn is like a perfect place for him. But I know attorneys who have built incredible brands like immigration practices based on reels, because they like communicating through video, they share relevant information, and clients find them through that. And so, like, you know, and the last thing I'll say on this, and granted that, you know, full disclosure, I work at Meta Platforms Inc. They own Facebook and Instagram and whatnot. So, these are my personal views, not those of Meta. But like there are communities within all of these platforms. Go find the community that fits you and your brand. And to Tyler and April's point, like, it may be bringing your offline community online, or it may be finding an entirely different online community for yourself. You know, like, you know, I am part of a Peloton law moms group on Facebook. Now, look, I'm not developing business through that group necessarily, but I am conscious that, like, all those lawyers, all those, you know, other lawyer moms who like to Peloton, you know, see my posts and are aware of who I am and what I'm saying. And so again, your brand is everywhere. You need to be aware of it. And that's why make it authentic to you, find your community. And I think it can be both online and offline.
Great, thank you, Katie. So the last question, it looks like we're at the top of the hour, so we're not going to talk about it, but if y'all look in the Q&A box, it was a question about shifting to different areas of the law, and Cannon did put his input in there. So if y'all want to read that or screenshot it, whatever you want to do, feel free to take a look at that. But that is about all the time we have for our program today. I'd like to thank our attendees for tuning in, and to our esteemed faculty for joining us and providing their words of wisdom. Hopefully y'all have some actionable takeaways that you took from our 4 outstanding individuals that we had today and their perspectives. If you guys have any questions, feel free to reach out. Our contact information is on the registration link. And thank you everyone for attending. We'll see you next time.